Hello, everybody, and welcome to our practice ownership webinar. Sorry for the late start. We were having some difficulties getting the presentation going, but we are excited for everybody to be joining us today. It doesn't say that any attendees are in here yet. So we'll wait a few minutes until people get it. Sorry for the late start. We were having some difficulties getting the presentation going, but we are excited for everybody to be joining us today. Okay, sorry about that, guys. My computer was echoing on my end. I couldn't figure out what was going on. Well, welcome to our practice ownership webinar. We will be sharing some information today on behalf of DVMmatch, Huntington Bank, and we have a special guest, Dr. Keith True. He is a practicing DVM, but he also has a company of his own called True Vet Potential, here to encourage veterinarians around the country on how ownership is possible and how it is achievable. So with that being said, I believe that we should be ready to go here. If our speakers want to introduce themselves, we can start off. There we go. Perfect. If we want to move along. So today we'll be talking, like we said, about what banks are looking for, how practice ownership is achievable, and how exactly DVMmatch professionals can help you do so. So I will have everybody start introducing themselves. If Dr. True, you want to kick things off, and then we'll go down the line from Dr. True, Neil, to Kelly, Will, and then ending with Phil before we get into the presentation.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. I am Dr. Keith True. I am a practicing veterinarian, and recently, about a year ago, finished up an MBA. I was a previous partner in 3 different practices before exiting, and really have a strong passion for reigniting that ownership drive amongst early career veterinarians. And I'll talk more about that as we move on.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hey, I'm Neil McFadden with DVMmatch, and I'm in the Southeast, and I love to help veterinarians buy and sell their practices, and definitely love to help people buy. And so I look forward to just sharing a couple things with you in a few minutes. Kelly.
Oh, okay. I'm Kelly Jackson, and I'm with DVMmatch as well. And I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and I handle our operations in the out west. And we'll hear more from us. And I'm going to pass the mic to Will.
Yep, Will Caldis with Huntington Bank. I cover our central territory for veterinarians. Been with the bank almost 4 years and came over and helped start our veterinary specific group about a year and a half ago. So, and Phil, I'll let introduce himself, but he's a counterpart on my end.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Phil DiDonato. I'm a regional sales manager here at Huntington Bank Practice Finance. Thank you for taking some time out of your day. We're really looking forward to speaking with everyone.
All right, well, I'll go ahead and get started. So from a big picture overview with Huntington Bank, the way that we think about it and the way that I think the doctors, the brokers, everyone that touches the practice finance world it does have to understand that there are financial requirements that the banks are going to be looking for, the lenders are going to be looking for when we're thinking about loan approvals. We always want to put people first within our organization, whether it be our clients or our employees. But importantly, in order to continue to do what we do and support doctors, really all across the country, we have to be thinking about a uniform way that we can help support them in the transition to ownership. So when we talk about, the income and production of a doctor, it becomes very important to understand what are you earning? Is it stable to an extent, right? There's always, extending circumstances that we're going to talk about, but what are you producing? What are you earning? What is the cash flow of the business that you're looking to buy? And what is going to be the budget that will support the business and your hopeful lifestyle of ownership after you've gone through and you bought this business, right? So what are the necessary expense inputs to make the practice run at the optimal level? What level of production can you bring? What level of production do you want to bring to the practice? And what is the current state of the cash flow of the business that you're looking at? Those are the kind of the first steps as we have high level overview conversations of what is the right fit, because, you know, in a lot of different ways, I think there's a lot of good starting points for when to think about practice finance, or when to think about, you know, hey, I want to buy something. What do I do first? I think at least even having these conversations gives you a good idea of what you can afford, and what would make the most sense and make you happiest once you've gone down this road. So you know, outside of thinking about what do I want, what fits, you know, what's going to make the most sense from a lending perspective, what can the bank, you know, what can the bank support me with? There is something that I think that is going to be the strong underline, whether you're a first-time owner, you're an existing owner looking to expand or buy your second office or buy multiple offices, whatever it is. The way that you treat your credit health, in a lot of ways as a business owner, is going to be just as important as how you treat, you know, your mental health. How you think about taking care of yourself, you know, in the office is going to be important when you're thinking about, hey, you know, I have dreams and aspirations to do more, to look at ownership as this way to practice the freedom to practice the way I want to practice. Well, then how are you treating, you know, your you know, your personal debt? How are you treating any business debt that you may be taking on for you know, small loans or what have you? Are you paying on time? And are you, if you are taking on some kind of loan, are you making sure that you're not just leaving loans out there, making minimum payments? You know, are you doing things that are going to show the lender and show anyone else who might be interested? Even sometimes landlords will look at this kind of stuff to say, oh, this person pays on time every time, and it's important to them that they're doing things the right way. So now I feel invested in the fact that we're going to be able to take that next step with that doctor. Go ahead there. So it kind of as a big picture overview, you know, we're, you know, from a good credit standpoint, a liquidity standpoint, a personal debt and business debt standpoint, and your production ability, all of these factors are going to tell the story of, you know, will a marriage between practice and doctor, will these two things fit, right? So the buyer, you know, has the intent to go out and buy X practice. Well, we, from a lending standpoint, can generally tell by your production ability, what your personal obligations are, you know, how you're saving, your ability to save on an annual, monthly basis, and your credit score. We can generally say, okay, this deal makes sense, you know, and we can maybe even support you in having a conversation with the broker to say, hey, you know, this doctor is really, really qualified. I know they're interested in this practice. You know, we have to go through the full underwriting process before we can deliver anything concrete, but we're confident that this doctor is taking care of things the right way, and you know, would be a good fit for this office. And for you, looking at a very competitive environment where practices, you know, aren't necessarily available, you know, for all that long, if you find something and we can convey that you've done all these things right just through a conversation, it's going to make you a very, very competitive doctor and potentially getting and owning that practice. So just as a recap, you know, from a, you know, there are, you know, relative standard requirements when it comes to an acquisition. We can look at acquisitions and have generally a pretty easy way to say, hey, we think this is going to be a good fit pending a full underwriting review, or hey, there might be some areas that we need to work on. Maybe we should bring some other partners in to talk about this. Production and earnings are going to drive that office fit to know, hey, is this marriage going to work? Is it the right size of office? Or maybe it's a smaller office and you've been working 5 days a week, 12 hours a day. And it's like, okay, well, I guess maybe this is the first step. Well, let's communicate that so everyone understands what we're talking about. And then when it comes to your credit health, I mean, taking care of your credit utilization, paying on time, and thinking about before you go and take that new credit line, what is it going to be used for? How quickly can you pay it off? Do you have a plan? Because if we can nail these things up front, it tells us you're going to be a great fit as a practice owner, and it's going to make everything that much more, I think, easy as far as the next steps and getting approved and winning practices and all that kind of stuff. So And we, as we talk about this, the three things you can remember, in the conversations you're going to want to have. Hey, I want to buy a practice. Okay, well, let's understand where you stand from a creditworthiness standpoint. What is your financial history? Do you have a good idea of kind of where you've been, where you are, and where you want to go? And then every lender, whether it's us or anybody else, should be able to talk to you very clearly and concisely about what their lender requirements are. If anyone is coming to you as a salesperson instead of an advisor, they're, in my opinion, carrying out a bit of a disservice to you, because this is a collaborative, ongoing, consultative conversation from a lending requirement. Because as standardized as I can say an acquisition may look time over time, the reality is every deal is very different. And every person you talk to in this industry will tell you the same thing, that deals are never the same. So being able to talk about what kind of practice do you want to run? What kind of medicine do you want to be able to deliver to your patients? And how can the lender help find, to clarify the right type of practice for you based on the credit products and requirements that exist? If we can communicate that to you, you can communicate that to the market more clearly and give you the opportunity to practice the way you want in the future. And then on here, we just are covering what the kind of that standardized package is going to be. The more information, the better. This is probably from a buyer standpoint, the more information you can gather about yourself that we can put on paper and share with an underwriter, and the quicker it's available, hopefully the smoother and quicker the underwriting process is going to be. And lastly, I'll leave you guys with this, and I think this is a good tie-in, because as the brokers, the bankers, the consultants, the advisors that you have in your life, the reason that there are practice finance groups out there that are eagerly looking to support veterinarians through these loans and loan products is ultimately because we are collateralizing the practice to be able to give you this loan, give you a conventional loan typically for a practice transition. So we do take the collateral of the practice. So the practice is going to be a guarantor on the loan. We also will have the personal guarantor on the loan. So you are signing personally. And then I think the most important point that I can leave you with is people oftentimes come to us saying, hey, do we want to do a buy-in? Do we want to do a full buyout? What have you? When you are doing a buy-in, and there is a practice that you're going to become a 33% or 50% owner of, whatever it is, that practice will also be the collateral that is signing against the practice. So the seller, who's maybe a 50% owner now in this case because you're buying in, will never have to be a personal guarantor on your loan. That is not what we're asking, but we are saying that the seller, his practice their practice that you're buying into, in that case, that practice would have to sign. And I think that's important to call out. And obviously these are conversations that you would have well before going down this road. But I think it's important to remember that what makes this so great is that we are only collateralizing the practices in these cases. But it's important for buy-ins, especially that partner that you're signing up with, and you guys, you're going to go and take on the world with, they're going to have a little bit of a piece of the pie too, to say, hey, that collateral is going to be out there. So I think it's important, and I hope that something we can talk about in the future. But I think that pretty much wraps it up for me. That's the rest of my team. There's 4 of us to cover the whole country, so we're working hard out here covering a lot of states. But Neil, I think it's on to you there.
Yeah, I think it's. I'm going to move on here.
Oh, sorry, Keith.
Yeah, no, it's all good. No worries. Yeah. So, I'm here to really bring in the veterinarian perspective and just the importance of inspiring and empowering the next generation of veterinary owners and what that means for this profession in general. So we obviously go to school, we learn medicine, we learn how to treat patients, we learn how to communicate with clients, but unless you're actively seeking out that business side and leadership side of that aspect of veterinary medicine, you might not have as much confidence in pursuing ownership. But I think veterinarian ownership is something that is necessary for this profession, both for the sustainability of our own careers, but also the sustainability of excellent medicine practiced in our clinics. So, just hitting on this first point here, sustainable veterinary care, that veterinarian ownership is really going to support that long-term vision that prioritizes the needs of the pets, the clients, and the teams that, we as, soon to be owners or current owners need to be able to support as well. So, here, that profit is important, no question. We need to be able to service those loans, but if we practice good medicine, we practice good client communications, good customer service, that income is going to follow. Secondly, that cultural alignment and stability. When we come in as owners of these businesses, many of us veterinarians have worked every aspect of the profession, for all the way from kennel attendant up to associate veterinarian and now soon to be owner. That alignment and ability to relate to those employees from that top-down position, I think that really allows us to relate and build something special, not only for ourselves, but for the teams that we employ. And, obviously we want to practice excellent medicine, whether that's, gold standard or that spectrum of care model, being able to practice that medicine that, we feel good about being under our business is going to be important. And, you're answering to yourself as the owner, so that mission, that vision that you have for your practice, you're able to pursue that. And I think a lot of job satisfaction, career satisfaction can come along with that, which is important. So, that influence you can provide is critical to a lot of different factors of veterinary medicine. And go to the next slide there. So I did finish up an MBA last year. I've heard it multiple times where people think that they need to have an MBA in order to own a business. And I'll be the first person to tell you that a formal education in a master's program is not needed to go out and run one practice, two practices, even more than that. My mentors who ran very successful, independently owned hospital groups are some of the most brilliant business-minded individuals I know, and they did not go forward with a formal education. I think that there are reasons in which to do that, but to go out and buy a practice and start your career as a business owner, it's not something that you need to have as a prerequisite. During my MBA experience, yes, you learn the financials, you learn, the corporate finance, all of these other aspects that are involved with an MBA. But to me, and, even my lead ownership experience prior to the MBA, I am a huge advocate for the importance of leadership. That effective leadership is really what's going to take that, practice that's, doing well to that practice that's being great. That leadership is what is going to keep your team engaged. It's going to allow you to be able to delegate to other individuals to see them grow within their careers, which then in turn allows you to grow into your career as well. But that importance for going out and receiving, if you're going to receive any formal education, investing in yourself, in leadership development, I think is the best thing that you can do in regards to taking on that responsibility as practice owner and being able to grow that. Just from a financial and business ownership standpoint, we don't want to buy a business just to have it stagnate. We want to see that growth, and that growth is going to start with that leadership. Next, entrepreneurship is something that I see just stagnating or even losing some interest amongst early career veterinarians. Entrepreneurship is all about bringing good ideas and being able to execute that. Opening businesses, creating new models of the practice workflow that's going to make care more accessible. I mean, entrepreneurship is limitless. Like, it's all about bringing these ideas, and it's more accessible than you think. You're not just born an entrepreneur every time. You can invest in yourself and learning how to be an entrepreneur, how to think creatively. But I think a lot of it is just being able to hit go on that and actually move forward with it and get the confidence in which to do so. And lastly, I mean, as veterinarians and practitioners, our minds are built to solve problems. Yes, when in school we learn how to solve problems on the medical level, but we can use those same problem solving skills to take practices and grow them, or take practices and start them. And that type of mindset, that type of thinking just needs to be related and tweaked into maybe a little bit different parallel. But it's something that is going to accelerate the growth of your practice and accelerate the growth of your career as a business owner. So I hit on this before, the power of leadership development. It's leadership, effective leadership, strong leadership is something that's going to take that practice that is doing well to a practice that's doing great. It's going to improve your team retention. It's going to improve that client experience, and that's going to, in return, going to benefit you financially as that practice grows. Definitely invest in yourself. There are plenty of different continuing education opportunities, both within the veterinary industry and outside the veterinary industry, that is going to teach you the basics on which to become a leader. And I think the first leadership development that I really pursued formally was something that was hosted in combination with Zoeta. So it was within the veterinary sector, but it was something that drew upon experiences from outside. And that's what really opened my eyes about how to improve my communication amongst my teams, and really got me to see the importance of that. And the empowered leaders, so you're taking leadership, but you're also working towards delegating and building people up within your practice and allowing them to grow into leadership positions as well. That's what really keeps people engaged and allows them to bring those, even if they're not going out and opening their own businesses and everything, that type of mindset that you create within that practice allows for entrepreneurship. And entrepreneurship is really taking those ideas of the people that work within your business and allowing them to inject some ideas, not every single idea, but that creates that ownership type of mentality, which will in turn help your business grow and help your team grow within their careers as well. So another thing that I'll talk to veterinarians about is just, what are the benefits, the risks of de novo or new build versus an acquisition? Now I'm in the process of actually doing a de novo right now, and there's definitely some challenges that come with that. You're starting from scratch. Yes, you get to build the culture, you get to build the business, you get to build the building and design the building, everything how you want, which is great. It's very exciting to do that. But, when you open on day one, you don't have cash flow right away. So now you can grow that quickly. I'm not saying don't do a de novo. Obviously, I'm in the process of doing one, but you do lack that existing client base and you need to work to build that up. It's not something that's going to happen overnight most of the time. Now, when we look at the acquisition side of things, if you're buying a practice that's gone through the vetting process and makes sense to do financially, you're acquiring an existing client base right off the bat. You're going to have that immediate cash flow, you're going to have a team in place, which I'll talk about as a potential drawback as well, but it is that cash flow is king, and I think does decrease your risk profile when you go to purchase that business. Now, the drawback to that is you might be buying a dated practice. It might need to have upgrades. The team might not necessarily align with your vision. There might be outdated workflows and infrastructure that come along with that. But, yes, there are drawbacks, but it's opportunity for growth. Like I said before, we don't want to buy this business as something to exist as it always has been. From a financial and investment standpoint, I want to buy a business and have it grow. That's going to increase my return on that practice. And we want to be able to buy it and have that cash flow, but as with any investment, we want to see that investment grow too. So I think there are benefits to both, but there are risks to both, and I think it comes down to the appetite of the individual in that case. So, kind of just to summarize a few things, when you own a practice, you get to align your career with your own mission, vision. There is a study, even with the AVMA, that practice owners tend to suffer lower burnout rates than associates. And I think that goes along directly with the ability to work towards your own mission, your own vision, and your own business. Business ownership can create freedom and impact. One thing that I've heard over and over again is, the difference between owning a business and owning a job. When we own a job, you're there every single time, and I think that's also where leadership comes in. You want to grow that practice, and you want to think about it with a business mind as well. You want to own that business and be able to control that time that you have. But when you own the business and you work on the business, that freedom can become a real possibility. And I think when we talk about work-life balance, there's this connotation that practice ownership means that you're ingrained in the trenches of that practice every single day of every single week. And it can be that case, but if you set up the right protocols, the right delegation, and the right leadership from within, practice ownership, I think, actually provides the clearest pathway to work-life balance that you can have, along with coming with the financial rewards that are associated with that. And lastly, I think when we have veterinarians as owners, you are automatically a leader within that profession as a whole. And as we see more and more corporate consolidation and fewer veterinarians at the top in leadership positions, even if we're talking small scale, the more veterinarians that retain ownership of their practices, the louder the veterinarian voice is on the professional level as a whole. So I think for the long-term sustainability of our practice and our career, that ownership is necessary. And then just a little bit about my, what I'm working on. It's with True Vet Potential, it goes along with everything that I just talked about. So I'm looking to connect with aspiring veterinary owners. Even if it's just to empower you to take the next step, or teach you about entrepreneurship, or go along as a partner with you in a venture. Sometimes it just takes those training wheels that might come along with practice ownership and learning the ropes and gaining the confidence in which to be able to do so. It's like taking that entrepreneurial leap. You get to the edge and it's just hard to finally commit to doing it, but I want to be the one here to help push you over that ledge and embrace the joys of entrepreneurship as we move forward. And lastly, those to the transitioning veterinary owners, there are succession plans, and finding that next owner of your practice is not always easy. And being able to connect early career veterinarians and show them the benefit of that practice, of what practice ownership can be, can help carry on that legacy of the practice that you've built and that clientele that you serve. And we're at a time period that we'll probably talk about, but we are seeing fewer early career veterinarians wanting to pursue ownership. And we're going to reach a time here, and we probably have already, where the number of practices for sale is going to outweigh the number of people who are interested in buying. And that does leave at risk of practices closing down, due to retirement and other factors. So we really need to be able to empower that next generation of leaders to assume ownership roles and show them that yes, it can be scary at the beginning, but the long-term rewards of it far outweigh what the risk profile is.
Got you. I will get started here. If you can switch it over to me. Am I on? Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Neil. I'm with DVMmatch. I'm a transitions professional in the Southeast, and a little bit about what we do is we help buyers and sellers in the vet space. We help the sellers retire, and we love to help the buyers get established. And I'd like to echo Dr. True, especially on the acquisition side. We only represent sellers, and we really focus 100% on acquisitions. And just as he mentioned, you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to have an MBA. We're there to hold your hand, walk you through the process. We do a lot of the vetting for you and the banks. And primarily what we try to do is, while we're doing the vetting, is to present you a really good opportunity, one that already has systems in place, that's very predictable, some that maybe you can tweak and you can make them a little bit better. We love to find the hospitals that cash flow well. They'll cash flow, they'll cover the debt service, they'll give you a lifestyle that you desire. Also, Dr. True mentioned about the team as well. Getting a good team, a team in place, a team that you can build upon is very good, but also with your clinical skills, bringing on some verticals in a hospital that you buy, some new things. Typically, some of the older veterinarians that we work with that are sliding into retirement, they're not doing a lot of the challenging things. So if you can bring in any sort of specialty work, that's awesome. We 90% of the time focus on solo vets. So we try to keep a solo veterinarian. We don't really want to sell those practices to corporate if we don't, because we want to keep the local touch in the small market. We just feel that solo veterinarians really offer a fantastic service to their clients and also to their staff as well. So I just wanted to give you the confidence that you can do it. You're better than you think you are. So if we can go to the next slide, I'd like to hit on just a couple of things. I'd like to say, to start with, debt versus debt. When I talk to younger veterinarians, they go, Neil, man, I've got massive school debt. I don't think I'll ever be able to own. I've been told that all I need to do is work at a corporate location and things of that nature. Well, I disagree, because I've helped many people do this. And oftentimes you have to go into debt to get out of debt. You need to get debt that works for you. And buying your own hospital is going to be the best thing that you've done. And when I talk to veterinarians as well, probably the biggest thing that comes up, and Dr. True mentioned this as well, is work-life balance. I see veterinarians as being ultimately time-starved. They don't really have a lot of time, even to meet with me in the evenings. They're worn out. Most are working 6 days a week. And so this is going to offer you an opportunity. So, for instance, let's say you bought a hospital. You can determine the hours that you want to work. You can work 3 long days. You can work 6 days. You can get an associate or a partner in there, and you can job share. There's a lot of things you can do that can give you the work-life balance a lot more than working as an associate, as an employee. When you're an owner, it brings forth lots of benefits. And the final thing that I'll mention is legacy. So when you own your own hospital, theoretically, well, in reality, it doesn't cost you anything. You're going to buy the hospital. The hospital will produce enough cash to pay the debt service and provide you a lifestyle. In 25 years from now, you'll sell that hospital and get your money back, if not more money back. So it's really a true return on investment. What you're doing is you're buying a lifestyle when you buy the hospital, but also you're creating a legacy. Your name, or you're keeping a name that you're buying in a small town, maybe a town that you grew up in, and you want to offer more to your community. You're going to build a team and a culture that permeates and that you can pass on as well. So ultimately, it's freedom. So I just want to encourage you all to really look at practice ownership as really an opportunity for you to get control of your life, for you to have a better work-life balance and create the lifestyle that you want. And I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Kelly, and he'll take it to the next level.
Thanks, Neil. Thanks a million. So the big thing is the why, and why would you want to do this? And the thing is that you have to find your why. And just to let you know, the not to pile on, but to add value to what everyone else has kind of said today, is that you have to find your why. For some people, it's I need a different lifestyle. I want more time to myself. I just need to pay debt, because the biggest thing that happens is when you're a newly licensed veterinarian, or you're a 3 or 4 year licensed veterinarian, is that you're going to have a lot of debt out there. Like Neil said, you're going to have that $400,000, $500,000 worth of just student debt alone, before you factor in things like a car, a home, if you have children, and those other things. They're all debt. And so when you're working for someone, remember, if they're for them to run a good business, for every $5 they make, they give you one. So that's just how things work. That's how someone runs a successful business. So to pay off your debt and to create the lifestyle that you want for yourself, and to maybe take care of your whys, practice ownership is a great avenue to go down. It gives you the work-life balance. It gives you your own write-offs. And one example is a car, for example, or cell phones. These are things that you would pay for, but then maybe if you own a business, they could become business expenses. You would need to speak with your CPA to get those things figured out. But those are just some of the things out there. And then you may have the thing of, hey, well, who are these guys to tell us that, hey, like this great cuddly corporate position I have isn't for me, or maybe there might be something better. Is that we were in the same spot that you were in a few years ago. Neil and myself had really good, successful careers in corporate America, and then we chose to do this because, there's lifestyle and other things that we chose over, corporate America, and we wanted to be our own bosses, opposed to someone else telling us how to live our lives, and maybe we couldn't find our why. So my big thing is find out what your why is, and maybe that puts you to where you may want to do your own thing. Next slide, please. And like we've said, like, guidance is important. Guidance is key when you're going to go on this mission. And I think the most important thing is surround yourself with the best professionals you can. I would advise you, don't talk to me as a practice broker only. Talk to 10 practice brokers. Talk to as many people as you can to get all the information you can, because information is key when you're going to make these life decisions. And when you surround yourself with the best team that works for you, then that makes things more comfortable for yourself. Do the most due diligence you can. Kick every tire you can. Talk to older doctors who've had practices for 20, 30 years, and ask them how they started, and now that they may be exiting, what would have done different. Talk to your friends who recently started practices or purchased practices, and say, hey, what would you have done different? Because everyone's going to give you that information, because no one ever wants to see anybody fail. Everybody wants everybody to live the best life possible. And then remember that we're here to help you. When you surround yourself with the best team, we'll always help you through the negotiation process and everything else that you would need to become a good practice owner. The great thing is too at DVMmatch is you can create a profile, and there's the QR code right there. You can take advantage of it, and you can schedule a call just to talk about where you are in your life as far as a associate, practice owner, any of those things, to find the right match for your life. If there's anything else that you wanted to add, Neil? All right, guys. Well, next slide. We're going to
You
move to the
passed me,
question
Kelly.
section. Okay, thanks. You're up, Sam.
Great. Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. We know that was a lot of information. We know being a practice owner can be somewhat overwhelming, but we hope that this gave you some answers to your questions and let you feel more comfortable about reaching out to the people that can help you throughout the process of practice ownership. That being said, we would love to open the floor to any questions that people may have. I know that there's been a chat box that was live throughout the presentation. Carson, I got a few messages from people saying that they were submitting some questions, so I didn't know if you saw any come through on your end for our presenters to answer.
Yes, we do. In the Q&A panel there in the top, Q&A button at the top right, you'll see all the questions.
Okay, mine is not actually populating, so if anybody is seeing those questions. Okay, great.
I can
Will,
read those
go
out for you,
ahead.
Sam. So
Perfect.
the first, I'll just go one by one here. So the first question was, when is it the best time to engage the bank when I am thinking about buying? And I guess I didn't read it before I said that. Okay, so I'll answer that. The from a lending standpoint and the conversation around, hey, I'm interested in buying, when do I need to get pre-qualified? There's no wrong time to start that conversation with the bank, right? The earlier you have the conversation, like I commonly talk to people that are year fours in vet school, because of the fact that they want to understand, what do I need to prepare for in the next, they might not want to own for 5 years, but that conversation is valuable to me. It can be valuable to creating a network around you, and it gives you the necessary steps to, say, hey, where do I want to be? What kind of practice do I want to own? Oh, okay, well, I need to have X amount liquid. I need to be earning X amount of dollars, and I need to, continue my, appropriate credit score. Okay, cool. Like, let's have that conversation. Let's do that sooner rather than later. And the same point, I mean, a lot of what we do is, hey, I'm interested in buying in this part of the world. Okay, well, it's great. Kelly out in Arizona is a really good resource that I can connect you with that can help support you and get you to understand, okay, what's happening in this market. So I would say certainly before you would sign any kind of LOI is probably a good time to talk to the lender, and LOI being for any practice or lease space you're looking at. But I honestly, and not to be corny, would say the sooner the better, because it's only going to help you as you're preparing for, whatever ownership looks like to you. And then this one's for Dr. True. Looking back on your own journey into practice ownership, what financial assumptions did you make that turned out differently than expected? Is the risk of ownership worthwhile?
Yeah. My mentors, and one reason I got into veterinary medicine versus other medical professions was the opportunity to be an entrepreneur. I think that the opportunity to be an entrepreneur is extremely great in this profession. So I went into this with an ownership mindset right from the bat. So I was able to partner into my first practice about 1.5 years out of school. Granted, it was a small percentage of a startup that our group was doing, but I really got into ownership in my 2nd year, and that's where I got a larger percentage of a hospital that we had acquired, and took that from a $500,000-$600,000 a year practice to a $5.5 million a year practice in about 5.5 years. We reached that. I think that the risk of practice ownership, it might seem like it from the beginning. I know when I signed on my first loan to get into those practices, it seemed like a huge risk to me. But looking back on that, the earning potential that partnership allowed me to do, and granted, it wasn't just sign it and then immediately became something successful. There's a lot of work that goes behind that, but the risk of a veterinary practice is relatively low than anything else that I think I can invest in. So the return on investment that I've had on those partnerships I had before were better than anything I've ever invested in before. So the risk to reward, I think, is great. I was able to build a career and a schedule in those practices that provided me freedom, because I did run those as with an ownership mindset and not just a owning a job mindset. So yeah, I think the risk to reward is great. And now obviously I'm doing it again, and so it's not like I got those partnerships and then sold and then I'm doing it again. I think it's a great opportunity for myself and other veterinarians as well.
That's awesome. So I'm going to direct this to Neil or Kelly, whichever one of you guys want to answer. But are there common red flags or deal breakers you advise new buyers to watch out for when evaluating a veterinary hospital acquisition?
Kelly, you want to jump in on that from a banking perspective?
Yeah, I'll take that. Yeah, I would say this might sound really funny, but the feel, if something doesn't feel right, or you have a question, you should ask. That's the thing I always say, is that if something doesn't feel right or you have a question, it's similar to dating someone. You should ask those questions to get it out now, to make sure that you can proceed and feel comfortable with a situation. But one of the things that I always look at is make sure that the software matches the P&L, that matches the tax return when you're doing your due diligence. So if the software says there is $1 million in production and but the other financials don't reflect the same, that would be something that you may want to have a question to maybe there may be some cash transactions going or something along those lines. So I think that the software should always look something close to the P&L, and the P&L should look something close to the tax return. I figure that would be the biggest thing that I would look for when you just talk about gross revenue.
Excellent. I'm going to direct this back to Dr. True. I think it's a really good question. I know we have about 5 minutes left. So if you could go back to your associate days, what would you do differently to better prepare for ownership?
They do differently. I think I would have asked for more percentage, if that makes sense. I went into it with a greater, an aspiration from the beginning. However, the amount of percentage, it seemed like a ton of money to me at the time. The growth percentage, was greater. So that would have been my thing. I know that doesn't probably answer your question, so I'll pivot it back to how I talk about it to students and early career veterinarians, is about having, even in those first jobs that you have, or even as a student, when you're interviewing for jobs, ask about the opportunity for ownership and learning about that when you're having those initial interviews. When I pretty much hire exclusively new graduate veterinarians, and I talk about ownership and equity as something that they can work towards, whether that be on their own or whether that be as a partner. So I think the best thing that I would say is just having those conversations early in your career, because you start speaking it into existence when you start approaching it with that mindset of like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And just finding those right mentors that'll help you achieve that and support that goal in the long run.
Excellent. All right, so I have 2 last questions. One, I think, kind of ties in with that, and then I'm going to end with you, Neil. So the question was, what are the most common financial hurdles you see first-time veterinary buyers face, and how does Huntington help overcome those obstacles? So, I would say what I'm seeing the most now is probably just purely a personal savings thing, and I think that can directly be tied into the cost of things, the experience that people are having in across all walks of life with the cost of everyday life. So I do think that we've seen the impact of how much capital our associates and first-time owners or potential first-time owners will have on hand, and so that there can be some challenges there. I would say for the most part, what we do see is that you have doctors that are actually earning, honestly, more than ever, which part of the corporate consolidation and things have allowed that, But in general, when it comes to liquidity, I think being able to talk to good advisors, not even specifically within the Huntington world, just in general, can you find a good instrument for savings, whether it be a marketable security or a CD or something like that, to help show that you're future minded and you're letting your money grow on its own as you're saving for the rest of your life, not necessarily retirement, but hey, I want to buy something, but I know I'm a couple years out. What am I doing? And we can certainly have that conversation and help engage you with good support teams that will talk to you about that. And then the other thing is that with us specifically, with Huntington, we do utilize, there is risk mitigation across the board. So if you're looking at something and you're not really sure, but you want to own, we do have certain loan products and risk mitigation tools that we can utilize and pass on, and kind of build a loan around. And so when you're engaged with a broker, you're engaged with a space, and you want to be in that space, you want to, you want to engage on that practice. Okay, we can work backwards from here's what I want, here's where I am, how do I connect this, and do we have the right loan products to help support that? And in some cases the answer is yes, in some cases the answer is no. So we have to work through that. But the earlier we have that discussion, the greater the odds are we can prepare for where that future state's going to be. So lastly, Neil, how early should I engage with DVMmatch if I'm hoping to buy a practice within the next year, and what should I be doing in the meantime?
Sure. That's a great question. I think people ask me all the time, when do I need to begin? And that's when it first pops into your head. So like Kelly said, go ahead and make a profile, put your contact information, and most importantly, choose your locations that you desire. And whenever we do put a practice up, the way our algorithms are written, you'll get an automatic email that there's a hospital coming up in an area that you want to be in. Also, everything starts with a conversation. So just pick up the phone, call Kelly, call myself, or any of our colleagues, and we're happy to talk to you and walk you through it. And it really helps when you do that, because we get to know you a little bit and kind of know what you're looking for, what you're not looking for, and we can stay in touch. And you really have a jump on the general public when you do that. So I just encourage early as possible. We help sellers sometimes 3 to 5 years out. So we're happy to do that with buyers as well.
So I don't see any other, let me see if there's anything else. Yep, I didn't see any other questions. I don't know if there's any other that are going to populate here. Sam, if you want to wrap us up, if that's appropriate, or I can.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you to all of our presenters today, Will, Neil, Kelly, and Keith. That was awesome. I think it was super valuable information, even for me, somebody who hasn't heard this whole presentation myself. So for everybody that's attending, we would love to hear from you. Please feel free to reach out. We can get you in touch, and we will be sharing with all of the attendees, everybody who presented's contact information, and the best way to schedule time on everybody's calendar to start conversations. So with that being said, thank you all, and we look forward to hosting more informational webinars like this in the future.